The marble floor gleamed white and cold under the crystal chandeliers, but Elena Morgan did not see its beauty. She saw only the reflection of her own broken face as she stumbled through the heavy oak doors of Stellina Rossa at 11:36 p.m. on an August night so humid the air tasted like copper and thunder. Her waitress uniform clung to her thin frame, soaked through from the rain that had chased her for 6 blocks. One eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it purple and black, like a bruise painted by a cruel hand. Handprint bruises circled her throat in 5 distinct finger marks, dark as a necklace she never wanted to wear. Blood seeped through her white apron from a gash on her ribs, and her orthopedic shoes squeaked against the polished stone with each trembling step. She clutched something in her right hand. A prayer card, worn soft as tissue from years of being held, the edges frayed, the image of St. Michael barely visible anymore. It was the only thing she had grabbed before running from the manager's office into the August darkness. The restaurant had closed 2 hours earlier. The lights should have been off. But in the back private booth, 3 men in suits that cost more than everything Elena owned sat discussing territory deals over small cups of espresso. Luca Ferraro occupied the head of the booth, his 6 feet 3 inches frame rigid, controlled, every movement economical. His suit was charcoal grey silk. His white shirt was open at the collar, revealing a chest mapped with old scars. One scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, thin and white, a permanent record of violence survived. His watch was gold, heavy, worth more than Elena's car. His eyes were storm grey and absolutely still, the eyes of a man who had learned long ago that showing emotion was the same as showing weakness. Sergio sat to his left, younger by a decade, broad-shouldered, with the broken nose of a former boxer. Sal occupied the right side, silver threading through his dark hair, his knuckles scarred from 43 years of enforcing loyalty. The moment Elena collapsed onto the marble, all 3 men went absolutely still. The sound was small, a soft thud, her body hitting stone. But the silence that followed was massive. It filled the restaurant like a living thing. The espresso cups froze halfway to lips. Sergio's hand dropped to the table. Sal's eyes widened. Luca rose slowly from the booth. Elena's knees buckled completely. She fell forward onto the white marble, and her blood smeared across the stone in a thin red line. Her sobs came from somewhere deep, from a place beyond words, beyond control. Her whole body shook with the force of them. "They took everything," she whispered, her voice raw and shattered like broken glass. "Everything." Her good eye, swollen though it was, locked onto Luca's face. He was kneeling beside her now, his expensive suit pressing into the blood on the marble, and he did not seem to notice or care. "I have $200, Elena said, each word a small agony. 200. That is all I have left in the entire world. That is all I have for my daughter. For Lily." Tears streamed down her bruised face, mixing with rain water and blood. She held up her trembling hand, and in it was the prayer card, so worn now that the colors had faded to almost nothing. Luca Ferraro stared at the card in her shaking hand. He stared at her broken face. He stared at the handprints around her throat that matched no hands in his organization, no hands under his protection. And in that moment, something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest. He had not cried in 15 years. Not since the winter night when his wife, Lucia, had given birth to a daughter they named Lily, and that daughter had breathed for exactly 4 minutes before the monitors went silent. He had held her. He had felt her warmth leave her body. The nursery in his penthouse had remained untouched for 15 years, the name Lily carved into the doorframe in his own hand, a shrine to a life that never was. His throat tightened now. His hands, the hands that had ordered men's deaths, the hands that had built an empire from blood and territory and fear, trembled as he knelt beside Elena Morgan. "Who did this?" His voice was deep and solid like an oath, but underneath it was something else. Something that had been sleeping for 15 years, and was now waking up. Elena's eye locked on his. "Robert Hargrove. The manager. He's been stealing from the restaurant for 3 years. From the servers. From me. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Tips that belong to us. I finally confronted him tonight after my shift. I told him I had evidence. I told him I was going to report him to Mrs. Blackwell. She breathed, shaking. He said if I did that, he would destroy me. He said he had friends. He said nobody would believe a waitress over him. And when I tried to leave, She could not finish. She simply gestured to the bruises on her throat, the gash on her ribs, the eye that would not open. Sergio and Sal exchanged a glance that neither had seen in the other in 15 years. Shock. Pure, unfiltered shock. In 15 years of working for Luca Ferraro, they had never seen him sit beside anyone like this. They had never seen him kneel on the floor in a $3,000 suit. They had never seen him reach out and gently, so gently, touch the side of Elena's face with his fingertips, avoiding the bruises, as if she were made of glass and might shatter. "You are not alone anymore," he said quietly. "Do you understand me? You are not alone." Elena stared at him. She did not know who he was. She did not know that the man kneeling before her had spent the last 15 years building a criminal empire in Los Angeles. She did not know about the 300 men who reported to him, the network stretching from Long Beach to the San Fernando Valley, the territories he controlled through violence and loyalty and absolute, unforgiving will. She only knew that he was kneeling beside her, and that his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, held something that looked almost like recognition. What neither of them knew was that the man kneeling before her had spent every single day for 15 years keeping that nursery untouched, keeping that name carved in the doorframe, keeping a wound open that would not heal. What neither of them knew was that her broken face, her trembling prayer card, her whispered words about a daughter named Lily, would shatter every single wall he had built. Sergio's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face went pale. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Now, let us go back to the beginning. 6 hours earlier, Elena Morgan was still alive with hope, still believing that her life could change. Let us rewind to where everything began to break apart. The late afternoon sun hung low over Los Angeles, turning the sky the color of rust and old blood. At a coffee shop called Rose's on Wilshire Boulevard, Elena Morgan sat in the smallest booth in the corner, counting coins into a paper envelope. $1. $2. $17. She had 37 cents left after that. Her hands were calloused and cracked, the skin red and raw from years of hot water and bleach and the constant friction of wiping down tables 16 hours a day. She was 29 years old, but something in her face made her look decades older. Her hair was dark brown, pulled back in a tight bun that made her scalp ache. Her eyes were a pale green, but they held the exhausted flatness of someone who had stopped expecting things to get better. She was wearing the clothes she owned, a faded dress from a thrift store, a cardigan with a small hole in the elbow that she had tried to sew and failed, and shoes with the sole coming loose. Everything she wore had been purchased for less than $10. Everything she owned could fit into a single suitcase. The envelope she was filling was labeled in her careful handwriting, Lily's school fees. Inside, she needed $207 by Friday. It was Wednesday afternoon. A woman with red hair and a tired smile approached her booth. This was Rosie, the owner of the coffee shop, and she had known Elena for 4 years, ever since Elena had started working night shifts at Stellina Rossa, the fancy Italian restaurant 6 blocks away. "Honey, you look like you haven't slept," Rosie said, setting down a cup of coffee Elena had not ordered. "I cannot afford," Elena began. "It is on the house. Do not argue with me. You have been counting that same envelope for 20 minutes. Whatever you are trying to scrape together, it is not enough, is it?" Elena shook her head. She did not trust herself to speak. "School. Lily's tuition went up," Elena said quietly. "Her teacher says she is gifted. She says Lily should be in a special program. The program costs extra. I have been trying to save for 3 months." Rosie sat down in the booth across from Elena without asking permission. Rosie was 70 years old and had the kind of face that smiled easily, lines radiating from her eyes like sun rays. "How much short are you?" $207 by Friday. That is not counting what I owe Mrs. Chen for the apartment, or the medication for my mother, or... Elena's voice trailed off. The numbers never stopped. They multiplied like rabbits. You are working how many hours? 16 a day. I work lunch and dinner at the restaurant, and I clean offices in the Pearl District on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. The managers are supposed to pay us through tips, but... She lowered her voice. Robert, the manager at Stellina Rossa, he has been stealing from us. From all the servers. I know he has. The numbers do not add up. I have been keeping track. Rose's expression changed. It hardened into something cold. Do you have proof? Not yet. But I will. I am going to check the book tonight during my shift. He thinks no one knows the codes for his office, but I watched him enter it once. I wrote down the numbers. Rosie reached across the table and took Elena's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Elena, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think you know about Robert Hargrove, it is probably worse than what you actually know. Men like that, they do not become thieves by accident. They become thieves because they believe they are better than other people. And when you threaten men like that, when you tell them you have evidence, they do not think about consequences. They think about how to eliminate the problem. Do you understand? Elena nodded slowly. She understood. She had always understood. But she had also been $207 short for 3 months, and she was running out of time. At that same hour, across the city in a glass penthouse that overlooked downtown Los Angeles, Luca Ferraro stood at a floor-to-ceiling window and stared at the city below without seeing it. His penthouse was all white stone and chrome and carefully chosen art that cost more than most people made in a year. But the room he visited every single day was different. The nursery. He stood in the doorway, his hand resting on the frame where he had carved a name 15 years ago with a knife. Lily. The letters were still visible, worn smooth by his fingertips passing over them 10,000 times. The crib was white, untouched. The mobile above it still hung the same tiny stars he had hung the day before Lucia went into labor. The dresser still held the clothes he had bought, tiny clothes, impossibly small, meant for a baby who would never wear them. The wall still held the painting he had commissioned, a mural of a garden where flowers grew in impossible colors and birds sang with open mouths. His lieutenant, Sergio, appeared behind him in the hallway. Sergio knew better than to speak when Luca was in the nursery. This was the ritual that happened every single day, the same ritual, the same silence, the same wound that would not close. But today, Sergio spoke anyway. Boss. We have a situation. Luca turned slowly. His expression was still blank, but something in his eyes changed. The distance disappeared. The grief receded, just slightly. The predator surfaced. Tell me. Evelyn Blackwell's restaurant. Something is happening. Our contacts inside say the manager, Robert Hargrove, he has been taking money. Tips from the servers. Thousands. And apparently, one of the servers figured it out. She is planning to expose him tonight. Luca processed this information with the part of his mind that was always calculating, always assessing risk and opportunity and leverage. Evelyn Blackwell was a problem he had been monitoring for 2 years. She owned properties all over Los Angeles, and she laundered money through them. She had connections to the Castellano family on the other side of the country. She was precisely the kind of person who kept Luca awake at night because she was too careful, too cautious, and too well protected. If she was stealing from her own servers, if she was desperate enough to allow her manager to pocket tips, then something in her operation was falling apart. And if a server was about to expose that, then Evelyn's problems were about to become very public. Luca closed the nursery door softly behind him. He did not lock it. He never locked it. The door to the nursery was always open, as if waiting for someone to come back. Send someone to the restaurant tonight, he said. I want to know everything that happens. He did not know yet that this decision would change his life. He did not know that the woman who was about to walk into Robert Hargrove's office, clutching proof of his theft, had a daughter named Lily, and that she had named her Lily not knowing anything about him, not knowing that the universe sometimes speaks in the language of impossible coincidence. He did not know that by midnight, he would be kneeling on marble floors, looking into the eyes of a woman who reminded him that some people were worth breaking every rule he had made. The rain came down like a curse that would not lift, and Elena Morgan sat in the back seat of the black SUV watching the highway disappear behind sheets of water. The windshield wipers moved in steady rhythm, thump thump thump, a sound that matched the panic in her chest. She was soaking wet, her waitress uniform clinging to her skin, her hands trembling in her lap. The car smelled like leather and expensive cologne, like a world she would never belong to. The tall man in the front passenger seat turned to look at her. His name was Sergio, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice calm, conversational, as if he had not just pulled her from a dying car on a dark highway. "Elena," she whispered. "Elena Morgan." "How long have you worked at Stellina Rossa, Elena?" She swallowed hard. 3 years. Since Lily was a baby. Sergio nodded slowly. He did not ask who Lily was. He already knew. Luca Ferraro's people always knew everything. "And you have never met Luca?" "No. I have only seen him twice. From a distance." The car turned onto a surface street, leaving the highway behind. The rain continued, relentless, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Elena pulled her stained apron tighter around herself, suddenly aware of how she looked, how she smelled like grease and desperation, and 14 hours of standing on her feet. She thought about the $43 in tips she had counted under those fluorescent lights. 14 hours. 10 tables. 3 groups who had left nothing at all. One businessman who had left $2 on a $90 tab and smiled at her like she should be grateful. And Robert Hargrove watching from the doorway with those cold eyes and those gold rings that caught the light whenever he moved. The restaurant appeared suddenly through the rain like something conjured from another world. Stellina Rossa occupied the ground floor of a building in Los Feliz that looked like it had been built 50 years ago and maintained like it had been built yesterday. Marble columns framed the entrance. The windows glowed amber and gold. Through them, Elena could see the dining room she knew so well, the red leather booths, the soft candlelight, the people who could afford to eat here without counting dollars in their heads. The SUV pulled into a private entrance at the side of the building. Sergio opened her door and gestured for her to follow. "Come. He is waiting." The corridor they walked down was narrow and smelled like cooking oil and basil. Elena's orthopedic shoe squeaked against the tile floor. Every step felt like walking toward something inevitable, something she could not turn back from even if she wanted to. They emerged into a small private dining room at the back of the restaurant. A round table sat in the center. And at that table, alone in the soft glow of a crystal chandelier, sat Luca Ferraro. He was taller than she expected, though he was sitting. Broad-shouldered, the kind of man who filled space without trying. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of suit that cost more than everything Elena owned. His white shirt was open at the collar, revealing a chest marked with a single scar that ran from his collarbone downward, disappearing beneath the fabric. His hands were large, scarred, the hands of a man who had done things beyond sitting at tables in restaurants. But his eyes were what stopped her breathing. Dark brown, almost black, with a depth that seemed to contain entire lifetimes of knowledge. His hair was dark too, silvered slightly at the temples. He was older than she had expected, maybe in his mid-50s, but he moved with the grace of someone much younger, someone still dangerous. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. Elena felt naked under that gaze, as if he could see every failure, every impossible choice she had made, every time she had chosen between feeding her daughter and paying the electric bill. "You are Elena Morgan," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, the kind of voice that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. "You work the night shift at my restaurant. You are a single mother. You have a daughter named Lily. You are 5 days away from eviction." Her breath caught. How do you? I know everything that happens in my establishments. Sergio, bring her something to drink. She is in shock. Sergio moved immediately, disappearing through a side door. Luca gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, Elena. You are safe here. She sat because her legs would not hold her anymore. The chair was soft, expensive, the kind of chair that made her acutely aware of her wet uniform and tangled hair and the smell of grease that clung to her skin no matter how many times she showered. Sergio returned with a glass of water and a white napkin. Elena drank the water in one long pull. It was cold and tasted clean and real. Tell me about your car, Luca said. It is a 1998 Honda Civic. The transmission is dying. I cannot afford to fix it. And tonight, the engine light came on the highway. Then it just died. I tried to call for a tow truck, but I have no service and my battery was almost gone, and then your men arrived and I did not know what to do, so I just got in the car because it was raining and cold and I was scared. She had not meant to say that last part. She had not meant to admit that she was scared. But the words had fallen out like she had no control over them, like Luca Ferraro's gaze had pulled the truth out of her whether she wanted it to come or not. He leaned back in his chair. The candlelight caught the edge of his scar. Tell me about Robert Hargrove. Her chest tightened. What about him? Everything. Start with the money. Elena's hands shook as she set the water glass down. How do you know about the money? Elena. His voice was gentle now, and that somehow made it worse. I am asking you to trust me. Tell me about the money. So she did. She told him about the tips jar that never seemed to have enough money at the end of the night. She told him about watching other servers leave with pockets full of cash while she counted dollars. She told him about the night 3 weeks ago when she had stayed late and seen Robert pocket a stack of 20s and 50s from the drawer underneath the register. She told him about doing the math and realizing he had stolen at least $5,000 over the past 6 months. Money that belonged to her. Money that belonged to the other servers. Money for rent and medicine and school supplies and food that was not stolen from the restaurant dumpster after her shift ended. She told him about the prayer card in her pocket, the one her mother had given her before she died, the one that said God is never too busy to listen in faded gold script, the one that she held onto every time she did not know how she would pay for what came next. Luca listened without interrupting. His expression did not change. But something in his eyes shifted, hardened, became something sharp and dangerous like a blade wrapped in ice. There is something else, Elena said. Her voice had become very small. I was going to tell someone. Tomorrow. I was going to go to the owner and tell her everything. I have proof. Screenshots. The times and amounts. Everything. You were going to expose them, Luca said. I could not let it keep happening. Not to the other girls. Not to me. And you knew this would destroy your career at that restaurant. Yes. And you knew this might make enemies. Elena had not thought about it that way until he said it out loud. She had not thought about what Robert Hargrove might do when he found out she was the one who reported him. She had only thought about the money, about the injustice of it, about the fact that she was 5 days from being homeless and he was wearing gold rings and a platinum watch. I did not think, she whispered. Thunder cracked outside, so loud that Elena jumped. The building seemed to shudder with it. The chandelier above them swayed slightly, casting shadows that danced across Luca's face like living things. You are no longer going to tell the owner, Luca said. You are no longer going to work at Stellina Rossa. You are no longer going to worry about your rent or your eviction or how you will pay for your daughter's school supplies. Elena stared at him. I do not understand. You will, he said. But first, you need to understand what you have done tonight. You almost walked into a trap. You almost walked into a situation that would have ended very differently if you had not broken down on that highway, if Sergio had not found you when he did. I do not understand, she said again. Luca stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked street below. His shoulders were impossibly broad, his silhouette cut against the amber light of the restaurant beyond the glass. Evelyn Blackwell is not simply a restaurant owner. She is connected to people who hurt other people for profit. And Robert Hargrove is not simply a manager who steals tips. He is her partner. And they were waiting for you. They knew what you were planning to do, and they were going to make sure you could not do it. How do you know that? Because, Luca said, turning back to face her, I am Luca Ferraro, and I know everything that happens in this city before it happens. And tonight, you were seconds away from destroying yourself trying to do the right thing. He walked back to the table. He sat across from her again. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much power for too long. Your daughter, he said. Lily. She is 5 years old. How did you think Elena stopped herself? Of course he knew. Yes. She is 5. And you have no one to help you. No family. No support system. You work double shifts and come home and care for her and worry about money every single moment of every single day. Elena felt tears rising in her throat. She pushed them down. Yes. That ends tonight, Luca said. And in that moment, he was not a mafia boss sitting in an expensive suit in a private dining room. He was just a man who had heard something in her voice that called to something broken inside himself. Outside, the rain continued, drumming against the windows like it was trying to break through. And Elena Morgan, who had been invisible for so long, suddenly found herself visible to the most powerful man in Los Angeles. The rain drums against the windows of Stellina Rossa like a fist demanding entry. Inside, the kitchen erupts in controlled chaos, pans clanging, steam rising in thick clouds, chefs shouting orders in rapid Italian. Elena Morgan ties her apron with trembling fingers and rushes onto the floor at 9:37 p.m., exactly 22 minutes late. Robert Hargrove is waiting. He stands near the host station, his thin frame coiled like a spring, his smile sharp enough to cut. He wears a black shirt stretched tight across his chest, and his eyes, pale blue, utterly devoid of warmth, lock onto hers the moment she appears. He is 43 years old but moves with the restless energy of a much younger man, someone burning with a hunger that cannot be satisfied. You're late, he says. His voice is ice-wrapped in velvet. The storm, Elena starts. My car stalled on the highway. I don't care about your car. He steps closer. The cologne he wears, something expensive and suffocating, fills the space between them. That's strike 3, Elena. Final warning. She swallows hard. Strike 1 was leaving 15 minutes early last month for Lily's fever. Strike 2 was calling in sick when she had no one to watch her daughter. This is the architecture of his control, built brick by brick from her helplessness. I'm sorry, she whispers. You should be. His smile widens, cruel and certain. You're taking table 7. Alone. The owner's booth. Elena's stomach drops like she has stepped off a cliff. The owner never speaks to servers. The owner is a phantom who collects money and vanishes into the penthouse above the restaurant. Robert, You'll take the booth, he continues, his voice dropping so only she can hear, and you will not mess it up. Because if you do, you're finished here. No reference. No severance. Nothing. Understood. She nods because there is no other option. Table 7 sits in the corner, separated from the main dining room by a wall of frosted glass. Candlelight flickers inside. Through the glass, she sees 3 figures, men in expensive suits, their voices low and measured. She recognizes one of them immediately. Luca Ferraro. The man whose SUV found her car in the rain. The man whose hands guided her through the storm like she mattered. Elena approaches with a water pitcher, her hand shaking so badly she is terrified she will spill it. The ambient noise of the restaurant, clinking glasses, soft jazz, the murmur of conversation, seems impossibly distant, as if she is moving through water. Luca glances up as she sets down the first glass. His dark eyes, storm grey, penetrating, carrying the weight of absolute certainty, lock onto her face. He studies her with unsettling intensity, the way a general surveys a battlefield, taking in every detail in a single moment. "You were in the car," he says. Not a question. A statement of fact. "Yes," Elena manages. "Thank you for stopping. For helping me." He waves it away with one hand, and the gesture carries such casual authority that his two companions, Sergio and Sal, she learns from their quiet greetings, immediately fall silent, waiting. "How long have you worked here?" Luca asks. 2 years. "And the manager?" He pauses, choosing his words with precision. "Robert Hargrove. Do you like working for him?" The question hangs in the humid air between them like a test she does not know how to answer. She should say yes. Self-preservation screams at her to say yes, to protect herself, to remain invisible. But something in his eyes, something old and tired and knowing, breaks her open like an egg. "He steals from us," she whispers. The words pour out before she can stop them, a confession that tastes like copper and shame. "Tips. Wages. I tracked it over 6 months. He has taken thousands of dollars. From me. From the other servers. And the owner, Evelyn Blackwell, she is his partner. They split the money together." Sergio and Sal lean forward simultaneously, their entire bodies tensing. Luca does not move. His jaw tightens, just barely, a single muscle contracting beneath his skin. But his eyes ignite with something ancient and terrible. "How much?" he asks quietly. "I don't know exactly. But for me personally, based on what I can prove with my shift records." Elena's voice fractures. "At least $6,000 over 18 months. Wages I never received. Tips that were stolen before I could even hold them." "And you reported this to whom?" "No one. Who would believe me? Robert is connected to Ms. Blackwell. The police don't care about stolen tips from a waitress." "And I?" She trails off, her throat closing. "You what?" "I have $200 to my name. 200. And a 6-year-old daughter at home. I cannot afford to lose this job, even though this job is destroying me." Luca leans back against the booth. The candlelight flickers across his face, casting shadows beneath his eyes. For a long moment, neither he nor his men speak. The silence is so absolute that Elena can hear the kitchen doors swinging open and closed in the distance, the clink of dishes being stacked. "What is your daughter's name?" Luca asks finally. "Lily." He closes his eyes. Just for a moment. Just long enough that Elena sees something fracture behind his eyelids, something that has been sealed shut for a very long time. When he opens them again, his voice is different. Softer. But also more dangerous. "Finish your shift," he says. "We will talk after." Elena nods and retreats, her prayer card, the one her mother gave her before cancer took her voice, then her breath, then her entire presence from the world, suddenly heavy in her apron pocket. She moves through the rest of her tables on autopilot. She brings bread and refills and appetizers. She smiles with the precise curve of a trained smile. And all the while, she feels Luca Ferraro's attention on her like a spotlight she cannot escape. At 11:43 p.m., as she is collecting her things from the back room, Robert Hargrove materializes. The door clicks shut behind him. "You talk to him," Robert says. Not a question. A statement delivered with the certainty of absolute knowledge. Elena's heart hammers against her ribs. "What?" "Ferraro. You told him about the money." "I only." He moves fast. Impossibly fast. His hand shoots out and closes around her throat, and suddenly she cannot breathe, cannot think, can only feel the pressure of his fingers digging into her windpipe. "You think you can report me?" His breath is hot against her face, smelling of red wine and the salmon he ate during his break. "You think anyone cares about a nobody waitress?" He slams her backward against the metal lockers lining the wall. Her head cracks against cold steel with a sound like a gunshot. White light explodes behind her eyes. Stars burst and fragment. His fist comes next, once, then twice, connecting with her eye socket with the wet sound of impact. She tastes copper. Blood. Her own blood, metallic and terrible. He squeezes her throat harder. She claws at his fingers, her nails scratching skin, drawing red lines. It changes nothing. You have $47,000 worth of problems now, he hisses. That's what you owe me for the trouble you've caused. 2 weeks, Elena. Find it or I make sure you never work in this city again. He leans closer. His lips nearly touch her ear. And your daughter? Your little Lily. I know where she goes to school. I know her schedule. I know her teacher's name is Ms. Chen. I know she likes the blue swing on the playground. He releases her. Elena collapses onto the cold tile floor, gasping, choking, her ribs screaming where she hit the locker latch. Blood seeps from a gash in her side, soaking into her uniform. Robert walks out like nothing happened. Like he has simply stepped outside for air. Elena lies on the floor for 10 minutes, shaking so violently she thinks her bones might break. The number echoes in her mind like a prayer said backward. 47,000. The number is impossible. Insurmountable. She has $200. She has nothing else. She scrambles to her feet and grabs her prayer card from her locker, the cardboard worn soft from years of her mother's hands, from her own trembling fingers during sleepless nights. Then she runs. The rain has stopped but the air is thick, suffocating, pressing against her skin like wet cloth. She does not go home. Cannot face her daughter like this, her face shattered, blood in her hair, terror in her eyes. She walks. And walks. Until her feet carry her back to Stellina Rossa, to the one person who has looked at her like she is not invisible. The back door is unlocked. She stumbles through the kitchen, the last chef has gone home, the stove's cooling, the air thick with the ghost of 1,000 meals. She moves through the dining room on legs that barely hold her weight. Luca Ferraro still sits in his booth, now alone, reviewing papers under candlelight. The white tablecloth gleams like fresh snow. His suit jacket is draped over the back of the booth, and his white shirt is unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the smooth skin of his chest. He looks up. He goes absolutely still. Elena collapses at the entrance to his booth, and blood drips onto the marble floor. One drop. Then another. Then a small pool spreading like a flower blooming in time-lapse. They took everything, she sobs. The words pour out in a torrent: Robert, the threat, the beating, the $47,000 debt, her daughter at home with a neighbor, the $200 in her bank account that is supposed to last until her next paycheck, the impossibility of it all. She cries until her voice breaks into silence. Luca Ferraro kneels beside her for the second time that night. His hands that have broken bones and ended lives, hands that have carried the weight of a criminal empire built on pain and fear, are impossibly gentle as he helps her sit. He removes his suit jacket and drapes it over her shaking shoulders. The fabric is warm and carries the scent of him, something expensive, something that smells like power and smoke. Sergio, he calls quietly. His lieutenant appears from the shadows instantly, as if he has been waiting. Get the doctor. Now. Sergio's eyes widen when he sees Elena's face, the swelling around her eye, the blood in her hair, the way her hands shake, but he vanishes without question. This is the code. This is the loyalty that holds his world together. Luca sits beside her on the floor, his back against the booth, his expensive trousers darkening as they absorb the spilled water and blood from the marble. The 47,000, he says softly. It is invented. A number to terrify you. Hargrove has no legal claim to your wages. He is simply trying to silence you before you report him. Elena shakes her head. He said 2 weeks. He threatened my daughter. He knows where she goes to school. He knows her teacher's name. What is her name? Luca asks. Your daughter. Lily. She's 6. Luca goes rigid. His entire body tenses like he has been struck. For a long moment, he does not move, does not breathe. The candlelight from the booth casts shadows across his face, and in those shadows, Elena sees something ancient and broken. I had a daughter named Lily, he says finally, his voice barely above a whisper. 15 years ago. She never drew breath. My wife was pregnant. There were complications. By the time we reached the hospital, it was too late. Elena turns to look at him. See something shattered in his dark eyes, something that has been bleeding silently for a decade and a half. The nursery is still there, he continues. In my house. I never dismantled it. Never touched it. For 15 years, I have walked past that closed door and felt nothing but emptiness. Nothing but the weight of a life that never happened. He looks at her with devastating honesty. Until tonight. When you said her name. The doctor arrives at 12:17 a.m., a thin man with grey hair and a leather medical bag who asks no questions and introduces himself only as Dr. Castellano. He cleans Elena's wounds with gentle precision, stitches the gash on her ribs, examines her eye with a small flashlight. No permanent damage, he says in a voice that carries the weight of many years and many wounds. Rest. Ice. Pain medication. He leaves pills in a small white bottle and vanishes without another word. Sal brings espresso and water in silence. He stares openly at his boss sitting on the cold floor beside a beaten waitress, speaking softly about a daughter he has never mentioned in all their years together. At 1 a.m., Luca makes a call. I need a full audit of Stellina Rossa. Every transaction, every employee record. Focus on Robert Hargrove and Evelyn Blackwell. He pauses. Listens. I do not care about the time. Do it now. He hangs up. Looks at Elena with eyes that hold centuries of pain. Why would you help me? She whispers. I am nobody. No, Luca says, and his voice is like thunder. You are a mother protecting her child. There is nothing more powerful than that. Nothing. At 2 a.m., preliminary reports arrive via encrypted email. Robert Hargrove has stolen $23,000 in tips and wages over 18 months. Evelyn Blackwell knew, her signature appears on falsified payroll documents. They have been splitting the profits down the middle, each taking thousands while Elena counted coins. Luca's jaw tightens as he reads. The muscles in his neck cord. Something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest, something that has been waiting for exactly this moment, this justification, this permission. Elena sits in the booth now, wrapped in his jacket, her prayer card clutched in her small fist. What happens now? She asks. Luca looks at her with eyes that have seen too much darkness and are about to unleash some of it. Now, he says, you go home to your daughter. Tell her you are okay. Tell her that you love her. And then you sleep. And you? I handle Robert Hargrove. What does that mean? Handle. He looks at her for a long moment, and she sees the answer in his face. Not death. Death would be too quick, too merciful. Something else. Something systematic. Something that erases a man's entire existence while leaving his body intact. Justice, he says finally. The kind that the police will never deliver. But what Elena Morgan did not know was that Luca Ferraro had already made 3 calls that would set events in motion. That at this very moment, in a warehouse in Long Beach, men were being given orders. That by sunrise, Robert Hargrove's bank accounts would be frozen by federal investigators. That Evelyn Blackwell, sleeping peacefully in her penthouse, had less than 48 hours before her world collapsed entirely. That both of them were about to learn that some debts are collected by men who do not negotiate. 2 days of silence. That was all Elena Morgan had. 48 hours where her phone did not ring, where no shadow moved across her apartment window, where Lily slept without nightmares. She sat on the worn fabric of her couch at 3 in the morning, the prayer card clutched between her fingers, its edges soft from years of handling. Her mother's prayer card. Hail Mary, full of grace. The words had faded to almost nothing. She had been reading them since she was 7 years old. The ice pack against her eye had melted hours ago. She replaced it anyway, pressing the cold against the swelling bruise, watching her reflection distort in the kitchen window. One eye nearly shut. Handprint bruises darkening her throat like a colonnade of violence. The bleeding had stopped, but every time she swallowed, her body reminded her of Robert's hands. At 5:36 a.m., her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She did not answer. The text came through instead. Time's running out. $47,000. 12 days left. Another text, 15 seconds later. I know where your daughter sleeps. Elena's hands went numb. The prayer card fell to the floor. She stood up so fast the room tilted. Lily was in the bedroom down the hall, sleeping in the small bed Elena had bought at a thrift store, with the pink blanket that had belonged to another child, another family, another life. Lily was 6 years old. Lily loved coloring books and dinosaurs and the way her mother braided her hair before school. Lily was all Elena had left in this world. She moved through the apartment checking locks. Front door. Back door. Windows. The chain on the front door rattled as she pulled it tight. She locked the bedroom door where Lily slept, turned the deadbolt, then wedged a chair beneath the handle. It would not stop anyone determined. But it might slow them down. It might give her enough time to call 911, though she already knew what would happen. Police reports took days. Robert Hargrove was a ghost to them. A missing person with no real priority. She sat on the edge of Lily's bed and listened to her daughter breathe. On the third night, someone knocked. Elena's blood crystallized. She was in the kitchen, washing a single plate, when the knocking came. Not urgent. Not angry. Rhythmic. Patient. The knock of someone who knew they had already won. She looked through the peephole. Robert Hargrove stood in the hallway in a short-sleeved shirt, his arms crossed, a cigarette burning between his fingers. He looked calm. That was the worst part. Not rage. Not desperation. Calm. Elena opened the door but kept the chain locked. 6 inches of space between them. Her voice came out as a whisper, shaped by terror. You need to leave. I need $10,000, Robert said. By tomorrow. Consider it a down payment on what you owe me. I don't have it. Elena's fingers gripped the door frame. I have $200. That's everything. Robert leaned against the door. The chain strained. His smile was the smile of a man who had already calculated exactly how much pain he could inflict before consequences found him. Then I take your daughter instead. Plenty of people who would pay for a pretty little girl. The words landed like a blade through her heart. Elena slammed the door. Locked it. Slid the deadbolt home. Her legs gave out and she collapsed against the wood, her entire body shaking so violently she thought her bones might splinter. She could hear him laughing in the hallway. Actually laughing. The sound of his footsteps receding. The elevator doors closing. She called 911. The dispatcher was kind but efficient. They took a report. Said an officer would follow up. Elena knew exactly what that meant. They had 400 reported crimes a week in Los Angeles. Waitress with no money and no connections would be filed in a drawer. She called back 3 more times that night. Same response. Same false assurance. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, Elena climbed the fire escape to the roof of her building. The night was humid and still. The city sprawled below her, thousands of lights, millions of people. She sat on the cold metal of the railing and let her legs dangle over the edge. The prayer card was in her hand again. She had pulled it out without thinking, the way other people reached for cigarettes or alcohol. The drop was 6 stories. Not enough to be certain, but enough. She thought about the math. $200. 47,000 owed. 12 days to produce it. A 6-year-old daughter. An apartment that was not hers. A job she no longer had. A body that ached in places that would never heal properly. She thought about Lily growing up in foster care. Lily wondering where her mother went. Lily learning that the world was not a safe place, that love was not enough to protect you, that sometimes the people who were supposed to help you disappeared. She lifted her foot toward the railing. "Mama." Lily's voice came through the open window behind her, small and sleepy and perfect. That single word, spoken in innocence, containing everything Elena had fought for since she pushed a 6-pound baby into the world in a hospital charity ward. Elena pulled her foot down. She turned away from the edge of the roof. She went back inside. She lay down beside her daughter and held her until morning came. At 6:51 a.m., Robert Hargrove opened his apartment door to retrieve the newspaper. 12 men in black suits stood in the hallway. They moved like ghosts. Like machinery. Like men who had done this exact thing 200 times before. Robert's mouth opened to speak. A hand clamped over it. His arms were pulled behind his back. His feet left the ground. He was carried into a black SUV before anyone on the street even looked up. The door closed with a muted thud. The engine started. By 6:03 a.m., the street was empty again. The van arrived at an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district at 6:45 a.m. The building was the color of rust and broken promises. Windows boarded with wood. No signs. No markings. Robert was dragged inside, thrown into a metal chair, restrained. The metal was cold. It was the last thing he would ever feel that was not pain. Giovanni Castelliano entered the room at 7:15 a.m. He was 58 years old, with dead eyes and scarred knuckles. He had been breaking people for 37 years. It was, he would have told you, an art form. "You threatened a woman under Ferraro's protection," Giovanni said. His voice was conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "You threatened her child." Robert's face went white. "I didn't know. Please, I'll disappear. I'll leave the city." Giovanni smiled. It was not kind. It was not angry. It was the smile of a man about to collect a debt. "Yes," Giovanni said. "You will." Robert screamed. The sound echoed off the warehouse walls. It lasted for a very long time. The warehouse was empty by 8:06 a.m. Cleaned. Sanitized. Empty. At 9:08 a.m., federal agents arrived at Evelyn Blackwell's penthouse in downtown Los Angeles. She opened the door in a silk robe, champagne in hand, laughing about a charity gala she was planning. The agent held up a warrant. Evelyn's face transformed. Not with fear. With confusion. As if the rules she believed in had suddenly stopped applying. "Evelyn Blackwell, you are under arrest for wage theft, fraud, and racketeering." "This is a mistake," she said. "I'm a legitimate businesswoman." "You stole $47,000 from your employees over 2 years, the agent said. "We have bank records. Falsified payroll documents. Testimony from 23 workers. They seized everything that morning. Her penthouse. Her cars. Her jewelry. Her bank accounts. All of it, evidence now." Evelyn Blackwell, who wore $1,000 shoes and laughed at servers, was walked out in handcuffs as news cameras flashed. The photographs ran on every news outlet by noon. A woman who had believed herself untouchable, learning otherwise. 40 years in federal prison. No parole. At 11:51 a.m., Elena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. Elena Morgan? A man's voice, calm and professional. Yes? Robert Hargrove has left Los Angeles. He will not return. The Los Angeles Police Department has been notified of his crimes against you. A detective will contact you today. You are safe. The line went dead. Elena sat on her couch, holding Lily against her chest, and cried. But these were not tears of despair. These were tears of a person who had stepped back from the edge and found solid ground beneath her feet. These were tears of relief. Of disbelief. Of a woman learning, for the first time in months, that there were people in this world who still believed in justice. 1 year later, in August, the sky bleeds orange and gold as the sun sinks toward the Pacific. Elena Morgan stands at the floor-to-ceiling window of a penthouse apartment on the 42nd floor of a glass building overlooking Los Angeles. The city spreads below her like a circuit board of light, 10 million lives moving through 10 million stories, and she is no longer invisible among them. She wears a tailored black dress, simple and elegant, her dark hair pinned back to show the unmarked line of her throat. The bruises are gone. The swollen eye is just a ghost story she tells herself late at night. Her hands, once raw from cleaning other people's messes, are smooth now, manicured, steady. She manages 3 restaurants under a new ownership structure. Luca paid for her business degree as a gift she did not ask for and spent 6 months refusing. Eventually she accepted, on the condition that she repay every dollar. She did. 8 months of triple shifts, every payment documented, every debt erased. She is free. But tonight, standing at this window in her own apartment, paid for with her own money, Elena feels the weight of an absence. 10 months. She has not seen Luca Ferraro in 10 months. After Robert Hargrove vanished and Evelyn Blackwell was led out of her penthouse in federal handcuffs, Luca withdrew. Not coldly. Deliberately. Respectfully. He gave Elena space the way a gardener gives a broken plant space to grow, leaving water but not touching the stems. She does not know if it was an act of honor or an act of regret. The doorbell rings at 10:56 p.m. precisely. Elena's breath catches. She has not expected anyone. The security desk downstairs would have called ahead. Unless they did not. Unless someone with a particular kind of authority told them not to. She opens the door. Luca Ferraro stands in the hallway. He wears a dark suit, charcoal gray, tailored across his broad shoulders, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His dark hair shows threads of silver now at the temples. But it is his eyes that stop her. They are older than they were a year ago, weighted with something she cannot name. "May I come in?" His voice is quiet. Careful. Like a man approaching something fragile. She nods, steps aside. The door closes behind him with a soft click. They move to the balcony. The night air wraps around them, humid and thick, carrying the smell of rain from a storm that passed hours ago. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbles like a beast turning in its sleep. For a long moment, neither speaks. Elena counts her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. The silence stretches like taffy. Then Luca breaks it. "I need to tell you something I have carried for a year." He does not look at her. His eyes are fixed on the city below, on the rivers of headlights moving through the streets, on the millions of people down there who will never know his name or hers. That night you stumbled into Stellina Rossa, bleeding and broken, saying your daughter's name. His voice catches. Actually catches, like a knife catching on bone. It shattered something in me. The walls I built after my Lily died. The emptiness I wrapped around myself like armor. You broke it open. Elena's breath stops. Every day since, he continues, his voice dropping lower, I have chosen between 2 fears. The fear of losing you if I told you the truth. And the fear of never telling you at all. He finally turns to look at her. His dark eyes are glistening. Not quite tears, but approaching them. I let you heal alone because I was terrified that my world would destroy you. That the violence and darkness that follows me would touch your daughter. That I would ruin the life you were building. A single tear slides down his cheekbone like a raindrop on glass. But staying away, he says, has been the hardest thing I have ever done. Elena stares at him. Luca Ferraro, the man who controls half of Los Angeles with a phone call and a whisper, the man whose reputation is written in blood and fear, is crying on her balcony. I am not asking for anything, he says. His voice is rough now, fractured. I just needed you to know that you changed me. That I see my Lily's name in every moment we had. That when you speak, when you laugh, when you hold Lily close, I see redemption I do not deserve. He stops. Cannot continue. His jaw tightens. Elena steps closer. The city lights frame her face. She takes his hand. His hand, which has signed the death warrants of a dozen men, which has closed over a gun, which has done terrible things in the dark, his hand trembles slightly when she touches it. I see her too, Elena whispers. Every time I look at Lily. Every time I think about that night. You saved us, Luca. But you also trusted me to save myself. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how much courage that took? She pauses. The same courage you are showing me right now. Thunder rolls across the city. The storm is building again, drawing closer, electricity crackling in the air. I love you, Luca says. The words come out like they are being torn from him. I have loved you since you stumbled into my restaurant. I will love you tomorrow and the day after that. But I understand if you cannot. She kisses him. Not tentatively. Not softly. She kisses him the way a person kisses solid ground after believing they were falling forever. She kisses him like a question finally answered, like a door finally opening, like a prayer being heard by something that listens. When they separate, his hands are on either side of her face, steady now, certain now. Yes, Elena says simply. Yes to what? He almost smiles. Yes to all of it. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to choosing each other every day instead of running. They stand in the humid night on the balcony 42 stories above the city, two broken people who found each other in darkness and blood, holding on to something so fragile it feels like it might shatter if they breathe too hard. But they are breathing. Both of them. Together. 6 months later, the restaurant gleams under new management. Stelina Rossa has been reformed, fair wages now, health insurance, workers who are not skimmed from. Elena consults here twice a week, implementing systems that protect people instead of exploiting them. Tonight, she sits in the back booth with Luca. Lily, age 7 now, sits across from them at a small table, coloring in a notebook, her tongue poking out in concentration, completely unbothered by the restaurant humming around her. Luca watches them both with an expression of quiet, absolute wonder. The nursery in his home has been opened. Repainted in soft yellows and greens. He filled it with books and toys and light. But he kept one thing from before, a small frame with the name Lily written in calligraphy, a child who was never born but was loved absolutely. Now it hangs beside a photograph of Lily Morgan, gap-toothed and fearless, grinning at the camera like she has never known a day of fear in her life. Elena reaches across the table, takes Luca's hand. Remember that night, she asks softly. When I stumbled in here with $200 to my name. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen, Luca says. I was terrified, Elena says. Broken. Ready to give up. But you didn't, he says. You chose to keep fighting. For her. Lily looks up from her coloring, sensing she is being talked about, and smiles. Every day we choose, Elena says, repeating words that have become their truth, between fear and trust, between closing ourselves off and opening our hearts. I spent months closed. You taught me to open again. Luca's voice is rough. And I spent 15 years closed. You broke down every door I built. Lily stands up from her table and climbs into Elena's lap, bringing her coloring book. Look, she says. Colors for happy days. And colors for sad days. When we feel sad, we look at the sad colors and remember that sad is not forever. Elena holds her daughter close, breathing in the smell of her hair, and something inside her chest cracks open completely. Not breaks. Opens. Like a flower turning toward the sun. Are we a family now? Lily asks with the blunt honesty of children. Elena and Luca exchange a look across the table. His eyes are glistening again, but he is smiling. Yes, Piccola, he says. We are. Outside, thunder rumbles low and distant. But inside Stellina Rossa, in the back booth where everything began, 3 people sit together in candlelight. A woman who learned she was not invisible. A man who learned to love again. A child who learned that some people stay. They are choosing. Every moment. Every day. Choosing trust over fear, choosing light over darkness, choosing each other over the broken pieces of their pasts. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear that even the most broken people can find healing. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story of courage in the darkest places. Comment below, have you ever had someone see you at your lowest and still choose to believe in you? Drop your story. We read every single one. This is about more than mafia romance. This is about the families we build from ashes, the courage to trust again, the truth that our worst moments do not define us. They reveal us. Thank you for being here until the very end. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky always clears. We will see you again in the next story. Goodbye.